Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great. And we have a very interesting situation. We have a young woman who is extremely extravagant. She really loves beautiful things, and she's asked her fiancé to buy her, well, the man that wants to become her fiancé, to buy her a very excessive engagement ring. But he's actually asked her point blank if she's willing to pay for half of it, and that was not going down incredibly well with her. So let's continue with where our story is going to take us tonight, because I think we're on for a very exciting ride. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's continue with part 3 of our story tonight.
Of course I want to be a gentleman, Deborah, and I would if I could, because I love the bones of you, but I just haven't got enough money to buy that kind of ring. Any other reasonably medium-sized ring, absolutely I could afford it. But the ring you want is excessively extravagant. Over the top it is. It's what you'd expect a groom to buy for an heiress or something. I don't see other women wearing such huge rocks on their fingers. Most women are happy to settle for a medium-sized diamond that doesn't break the bank. But not you. You want the finest ring that you can possibly buy from the jewellers, the most expensive they have on site.
I don't care what other women wear, James. This is about me, said Deborah, raising her voice. I'm not going to settle for a poxy little ring or a medium-sized ring, just because you're too stingy to buy me the big rock that I want.
You can have the engagement ring you want, Deborah. What I'm saying is it's much easier if you pay for half of it. You earn great money, and I never ask you to give me even a bean of it. You know you can spend your money on yourself, but just this once, I'm asking if you could help me out a little. Even if you just gave me a loan, I could always pay you back. I would be very grateful for your help on this.
I'm not paying for half of my ring, nor am I lending you the money to buy it for me. You are going to have to find the money yourself, James, and buy that engagement ring for me, or otherwise you'll be waiting a long time to walk me down the aisle as your bride. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
All right,
said James, realizing that his friend Noah had been right about this. Maybe Noah wasn't so out of touch with women after all. Deborah was stubborn at the very best of times, and one way or another, he had to find a way to buy Deborah the engagement ring she wanted. Why did she have to be so difficult? The dinner at the Italian restaurant wasn't going as well as he'd hoped, but at least he knew where he stood with Deborah in regards to the engagement ring she wanted.
Don't worry, sweetheart, he said, reaching out to grab Deborah's hand. I'll make a plan. You love that engagement ring, so you're going to get it. Even if it cripples the bank account, I will somehow make it happen for you. You know me. I would do anything for you. I'm like your father in that regard. I can't help myself.
Deborah sighed. I'm glad you understand, James, because just so you know, I don't compromise. The rest of the evening at the Italian restaurant was a bit of a blur for James, as he could not think of how he was going to get the money for the huge diamond engagement ring that Deborah Neeson insisted on having. When he told Noah what had happened at dinner that night, Noah had nodded knowingly, as if he'd known all along how Deborah would react to James's very uncomfortable suggestion.
Look, bro, I knew things weren't going to go well for you tonight. You of all people should have known that Deborah wouldn't settle for anything less than that big engagement ring. Life ain't going to be cheap married to the likes of her, and you need to realize that. Well, maybe it's a good thing, said James. She'll keep me on my toes, won't she? And she'll help me push myself to become more ambitious, so that I can keep her in the style that she wishes. I mean, don't they say behind every great man is a great woman?
Noah shrugged his shoulders.
Look, James, I'm glad you love Deborah Neeson. It's clear she feels exactly the same way about you. But I'm warning you, she's not an easy woman. And how on earth are you going to buy her that engagement ring when it's well over your budget? I'll have to make a plan, won't I? Said James. I'll think of something. You know what they say, where there is a will, there is always a way.
James was somewhat surprised that the very next morning He had a call from Mr. Neeson, who had arranged to meet him at a coffee shop in town for a sandwich at lunchtime.
"I've got something very important I need to speak to you about concerning my daughter,"
he had told James. James was not certain what Mr. Neeson needed to speak to him about. He knew Deborah was exceptionally close to her father, and he hoped to God that Mr. Neeson was not privy to what James had suggested the previous night about splitting the price of the engagement ring between the two of them. Mr. Neeson had always told James that his princess desired only the best in life, and he would likely not be remotely amused if James had tried to shortchange his daughter. When James arrived at the coffee shop at lunchtime, it was so busy with people queuing up to buy sandwiches and coffees, while some people were seated at tables being served by a waitress on duty. James was heartily relieved to see that Mr. Neeson was sitting at a table on his own. He appeared to be glancing through the messages on his cell phone. He got up at once when he saw James and shook his hands warmly as James approached the table.
"Hello, James. Thanks for agreeing to meet me at such short notice,"
he said, looking at James with bright eyes that were so remarkably like Deborah's. James felt relief that he had received a warm welcome from Mr. Neeson. That was a good sign, and he also appeared to be in extremely good mood. So what was it he wanted to talk to James about?
"Please God, may it not be about the engagement ring,"
James thought privately to himself.
"I've taken the liberty, James, of ordering sandwiches for us. I know you particularly are fond of pumpkin lattes, so I've ordered you one, along with a toasted tuna melt for the both of us. They do exceptionally good tuna melts here at this particular coffee shop, which is why I keep coming back to this place. They've got me as a customer for life, you could say. Well, certainly if they continue to make tuna melts as delicious as they do here. This place is hectically busy at lunchtime, because it is so exceptionally good."
"Tuna melt sounds perfect," said James, taking off his jacket and throwing it over the back of a chair. He loosened his tie around his neck to make himself feel a tad more comfortable. Moments later the waitress had arrived, laying down their tuna melts and their pumpkin lattes for them to enjoy.
"What did you need to see me about?"
asked James a little cautiously, as he took a sip of the pumpkin latte, which was surprisingly delicious and very flavourful. Mr. Neeson took a sip of his pumpkin latte. Some of the froth gathered around his lips, which he brushed away with the back of his hand.
"I know exactly what happened at the Italian restaurant last night," he said matter-of-factly. "My daughter told me on the phone this morning about what transpired between the two of you, and how you asked her to split half the price of the engagement ring she wants with her. She was most upset about that, James. It wasn't a good chess move on your part, not with a daughter like mine, who's used to getting exactly what she wants."
"Deborah told you about that?" said James, feeling the colour rising in his cheeks.
"You must think I'm such a cheapskate, Mr. Neeson, asking Deborah to pay for half of her ring. But it's the engagement ring she wants me to get her, Mr. Neeson, from the jewellers. It's an absolute fortune. It's not your average engagement ring, Mr. Neeson. It's the kind of ring that would be good enough for royalty to wear. Don't worry, Mr. Neeson. I want to do right by your daughter, and I will. I'll make a plan to get that diamond engagement ring for her, because that's the one she really wants."
Mr. Neeson's face broke out into a warm smile.
"What is it, Mr. Neeson? What's so amusing?"
asked James, looking somewhat bewildered. Mr. Neeson continued to chuckle.
"The very idea of you asking Deborah to pay for half of her engagement ring is causing me a great deal of amusement. You've got some balls, let me tell you, James. I'm quite sure if I'd asked Mr. Neeson to pay for half of her engagement ring when I proposed to her, she'd have slapped me across the face and given me a piece of her mind. She probably wouldn't have spoken to me for days after that. And she's not nearly as materialistic as Deborah is. Frankly, I'm quite surprised Deborah held her own at that restaurant and didn't make a complete spectacle of herself. She could have done anything, stormed off, thrown her alcohol at you, goodness knows what."
"Well," said James, hanging his head in shame,
"I suppose if she had done that, I would have deserved it. My friend Noah thought the same, that she'd throw her glass of wine at me, and literally storm out of the restaurant, but she never did, and I honestly don't know why. She's a real lady in that regard. But I didn't know what else to do, Mr. Neeson. This engagement ring that Deborah wants, it's so expensive. Quite frankly, I can't afford to buy it for her. But don't you worry. I'm going to make a plan, whether it kills me or not. She will get that engagement ring, and I can promise you that. What did Deborah say to you on the phone, Mr. Neeson? I hope she wasn't telling you that I'd let her down, for I rather think I have. She was unusually quiet after dinner that night. Well, last night. I think it hit her hard asking her to pay for half the engagement ring.
Mr. Neeson took a bite into his tuna melt and said,
Well, she told me how shocked she was when you had asked her to pay for half of her engagement ring. She wanted my thoughts on the matter, and asked me if I thought it was unreasonable of her to be demanding such an expensive engagement ring from you. And what did you say to her, Mr. Neeson? Asked James. Well, I asked her how expensive the engagement ring was. And when she told me, James, well, I nearly fell out of my seat. My daughter, we know, is extravagant at the very best of times. She's always been that way. But it's asking a lot for a man to spend that much on a diamond ring. When I was your age, I would never have been able to afford to buy such a ring for Mrs. Neeson. And if she had demanded me to buy her it, I guess like you I would have tried to find a way to make it happen, even if I'd been forced to take out a loan from the bank. Sometimes you do what you have to do to please the woman in your life. I've always lived with the belief that a happy wife means a happy life. But Deborah, sometimes she doesn't really know what the boundaries or limitations are when it comes to money. She's got no sense in that regard at all. If she was getting engaged to a man with $1 million bank account, then buying that ring would be like water off a duck's back for him. But she's marrying you, James, and she knows you're not made of money. So yes, she's been extremely unreasonable, and I'm on your side in this. Oh, I'm relieved to hear you say that, Mr. Neeson. I thought you were going to say Deborah deserved a man that was better than me, who could give her everything she wants. But I can see you appreciate this is a big ask from her. But I will make it happen for her, Mr. Neeson, as I keep saying. I want Deborah to be happy, even if I have to make some personal sacrifices in the process on her account. Look, said Mr. Neeson, I'll be straight with you, James. When Deborah was growing up as a girl, I lavished far too much attention on her. Gave in to her every single whim. Everything she wanted I gave her. I never realized that my inability to say no to my daughter would potentially backfire later in life. Even now I find it impossible to refuse my daughter anything. What Deborah wants, Deborah usually gets. My wife Ruth believes our daughter is a bit of a prima donna. She lays a lot of the blame about that at my door, and I suppose I rather deserve it. Deborah has been rather spoilt and pampered all her life. It never seems to cross her mind that some of her expectations are wildly excessive and far too high. She loves you, James, but at the moment she's being unrealistic to demand so much of you. I want you to know that I have your back. I told my daughter that I knew you loved her very much, but I assured her that if the boot were on the other foot, I'd have never been able to afford to have bought her mother such an expensive engagement ring. What did she say to that, Mr. Neeson? Well, she wasn't amused, was she? She said she wanted that engagement ring and that you were going to get it for her. Well, I will, Mr. Neeson. I'll make a plan, even if I have to borrow the money. There is no need for that, said Mr. Neeson, presenting James with a beautiful white bag, with the name of the jewellers on the front. Open it up, said Mr. Neeson, looking up at James with a twinkle in his eyes. What the hell is this, Mr. Neeson? Asked James, his fingers trembling as he opened the package. He almost gasped when he noticed a small red box inside it. He pulled it out and looked at Mr. Neeson with wide eyes. You've got to be kidding me, Mr. Neeson. This isn't what I think it is it? Open it up, James. See for yourself, said Mr. Neeson. James opened the box and gasped, for it contained the very expensive engagement ring that Deborah so badly wanted. Mr. Neeson, you bought the engagement ring? I can't possibly accept this. How can you afford to buy this ring for me to give Deborah? I must insist on paying you back. I can't possibly accept this. It's far too much." "You don't need to pay me back," said Mr. Neeson. "Your love for my daughter is more than enough for me. My wife doesn't know about this, but I'm very fortunate. I've had some breakthroughs with one of my investments in cryptocurrency, so I've managed to acquire a bit of a nest egg to pay for your wedding and honeymoon and other expenses. So I thought that I'd throw in the engagement ring for good measure. My daughter is champing at the bit to get engaged to you, so I encourage you to go ahead with my blessing and do right by her. You're a good man, James, and you're absolutely perfect for my daughter. I know you're going to make her very happy indeed." "But I can't possibly accept this engagement ring from you, Mr. Neeson. I must pay you back for it at the very least." "You have already, young man. You're making Deborah very happy, and that's all I can ask of you."
James could not believe it. He had the expensive engagement ring in his possession, so he didn't waste any time in planning to propose to Deborah. So he organised for them to stay at a pretty cabin, about 6 hours away from their home in Virginia Beach, where they lived close by to Deborah's parents, who were originally from North Carolina. He called up Deborah when she was at work to say that he fancied taking a much-needed break for the weekend, and he had managed to find a delightful cabin online in the Blue Ridge Mountains that was available for that weekend. "What a wonderful idea! I'd love to spend a weekend in a cabin at the mountains. You're spoiling me, James. What has brought this on?"
"Well, I've got a lot of making up to do, haven't I? It's the least I can do in the circumstances. I mean, asking you last night at the restaurant to pay for half of the engagement ring was a crazy idea on my part. So this is my way of apologizing and making it up to you by taking you on this impromptu weekend break."
"You're the best, James. What did I do to deserve you?" said Deborah, who sounded as if she was purring at the end of the line like a contented Cheshire cat. "Are we going to drive to the Blue Ridge Mountains?" she inquired.
"Well, there's no point in actually taking a flight, is there? It's only a 5-hour drive. That's not too far. The cabin I've booked is fully stocked with everything we could possibly need, from food and drinks, and it's all gourmet, you'll be glad to know. The cabin is kitted out with all the luxuries you can think of, so I don't think you'll be disappointed, Deborah."
"Is there hot water in the cabin for bathing?"
"But of course there is."
"Good. That's a relief."
"The only thing you need to bring, Deborah, is your walking boots and some sensible clothes to wear. I believe there are 3 lovely walking trails to take. One's called the Otter Trail, the other one is called the Pilgrim's Way, and the other one is called the Rabbit Warren Trail. So there's plenty of trails for us to choose from, and I know how much you enjoy walking in the countryside."
"Oh, I adore walking," said Deborah, sounding thrilled. "Please can I bring Liesel on the trip with us? She's a fitness fanatic, James. She adores walking in nature. Please, please say yes. I want Liesel to come with us. She's my best friend, and she's going to be the matron of honour at our wedding."
"But of course she can come,"
said James, not really knowing what else he could say. He didn't want Deborah's best friend Liesel around if he was going to propose to Deborah. But then again, if he insisted that only the 2 of them came out on this intimate cabin adventure, he might give his plans for the day away. Deborah might smell a rat and guess that he was intending to propose to her. And that was not a good idea. She might know that he had the ring in his possession, and he didn't want her to glean any of that. He'd have to pop the question in Liesel's presence, but that wasn't really that much of a big deal. Maybe Deborah would enjoy having her best friend around when he proposed to her, as she enjoyed Liesel being involved in most aspects of her life, and the 2 women were as close as sisters. It was on the weekend that James and his red Jeep Wrangler, along with Deborah and Liesel, made their way to the Blue Ridge Mountains. They sang for most of the journey, occasionally listening to some trendy music, while enjoying the views out of the window of the prepossessing scenery. They did stop occasionally, of course, for coffee breaks along the way, at various gas stations. Before long, the GPS was indicating that they were not far from their due destination, so the excitement in the car became infectious, as everyone was looking extremely forward to this break, and James was wondering what would be the perfect opportune moment for him to pop the question to Deborah. He couldn't wait to see her happy reaction when she opened the red box containing her precious engagement ring. One thing was for certain. Deborah had absolutely no idea that this was the weekend that James intended to propose to her. The journey to the Blue Ridge Mountains had been absolutely magnificent. They had taken so many windy roads through the countryside. The rugged mountains were cast under a bluish hue and were spectacular to behold. Their ethereal but powerful majesty demanded your immediate attention, for these were views you would never be likely to forget. The peaceful pastoral rural landscapes that surrounded them are known for their long-range vistas, and they were nothing short of breathtaking. Everyone in the car had noticed a few historic farm sites that they had driven past, and of course the ubiquitous collection of old-growth forests that had left an indelible mark on the landscape. "Oh, it's so beautiful here," said Liesl enthusiastically, pressing her nose to the window, leaving a big smudge on the glass pane. "I'm so glad you invited me on this trip. I've been wanting to have a weekend away for ages, and this ticks all the boxes for me. I mean, is there anywhere more spectacular than the Blue Ridge Mountains?" "Well, of course we'd have invited you, Liesl. I mean, when James told me he'd booked a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains for the weekend break, the first thing I thought about was you. I knew you had to come along with us, because you've been saying you need a break for ages, and I know how much you adore the mountains." "I'm just worried that I might be a spare part on this weekend break," said Liesl rather gingerly. "Maybe you wanted this to be a special break just for the two of you, perhaps." "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Liesl. If you had a boyfriend, he'd have come along too with us. You're not a spare part, and you never ever will be. Don't talk like that. Where the hell did you get that absurd idea from? We're all going to be like the Three Musketeers this weekend, aren't we, James?"
"We sure are,"
said James, trying to sing to Deborah's tune.
"Deborah's right, Liesl. We both wanted you to come on this weekend with us to the mountains."
"Where is this place, James?" asked Deborah, sounding somewhat impatient. "The GPS says we haven't got long to go now, but this road is fringed by trees everywhere, and there don't appear to be any turn-offs."
"Have a little faith, Deborah," said James, chuckling to himself. "The cabin is somewhere around here, I'm sure of it."
And as he said this, the GPS announced that at their next turn to the right, they had reached their due destination. "What?" said Deborah, crinkling her nose up in disgust. "We're on a road surrounded by trees on both sides. And I'm sorry, James, but I don't see any turn-off to the right. There don't appear to be any roads through any of these trees. So where are we supposed to go?" "Over there," said Liesl excitedly. "I almost missed it myself. It's practically invisible. But don't you see it? There's a driveway running through the trees over there. On the right, of course. But it's ambiguously obscure. Almost impossible to see."
"I can't believe I missed it," said James. "Thank you, Liesl. That's got to be the driveway that leads to the cabin."
"Well, it's hard to see," admitted Liesl. "But I do have a keen eye. Personally, I can't wait to get out of this car, to stretch out my legs. The sooner the better as far as I'm concerned."
"Well, we'll be there in a second,"
said James, rolling down the long drive that was scattered liberally with fallen leaves and surrounded by old-growth forests. Moments later they had drawn up to the perfect Hansel and Gretel-style cabin in the woods, and it was about as perfect as you could possibly get. And although very fairy-tale-like in appearance and quaint on the outside, on the inside it lived up to Deborah's extravagant demands. For the cabin contained everything that you could possibly want. There was hot water, luxurious bedding, fluffy towels, comfortable furnishings, the cutest wood-burning stove you've ever seen, with all the wood prepared and neatly chopped up for the guests to enjoy. There were high-end toiletries in the bathroom, and a refrigerator full of gourmet foods and plenty of champagne. "James, I don't know what to say," said Deborah, reaching out to give her boyfriend a very big hug. "This place is utterly charming, so incredibly romantic. What do you think, Liesl? Isn't this cabin as close to perfect as you can possibly get? And what about the views out there of the mountains? You don't get better than that." Liesl nodded in agreement. This place is like a dream. It must have cost you a fortune to book, James. There are no words," she said.
"Well, I'm very glad you both like it," said James, sounding pleased.
"Did you see the fridge?" asked Liesl. "The food in there is absolutely insane. It's the most incredible spread. We're going to be dining like kings tonight. Look, there's a visitor's book, and all the entries here are praising this cabin and giving it 5 stars. I can't say I'm surprised. It seems everyone has thoroughly enjoyed their weekends here. Everyone's talking about the amazing walking trails here. Apparently there's the Otter's Trail, which is pretty flat, I believe. Then there's a more ambitious trail, and it's called the Pilgrim's Way, and that means a lot of uphill walking till you get to the top of the mountain and you can see the valley below. And then there's another trail, which is called the Rabbit's Warrens Trail, and that's a bit of up and downhill walking. And apparently there are lots of strange comments about this trail in the visitor's book. But don't worry, I'll read that to you later." After Liesl, Deborah and James had unpacked a few of their belongings and settled themselves comfortably in the cabin, they decided to take the trail through the woods up a very ambitious high mountainous elevation, up a progressively steep path known as the Pilgrim's Way. When they got to the top of the trail, after some arduous physical exertion, they could observe the huge drop of the valley below, and the signatures of the Blue Mountains, blasting their curvaceous, rugged contours against the almost perfect blue sky. It was in that moment Deborah had visibly gasped, "Oh my word! This has got to be the most beautiful view I've ever seen in my entire life. Up here we're on top of the world. All that exercise, all that uphill slog. Well, it was so worthwhile, wasn't it? Just to see this." James, who'd been carrying the little bulge of the box in his back pocket that contained the ring, had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to propose to Deborah. He wanted it to be spontaneous, and what better place than this?
"I agree. The view is magnificent," he said, sounding a little cheesy. "But nothing is more beautiful than you, Deborah."
Liesl chuckled. "What is your boyfriend like, Deborah? I mean, honestly, he knows how to charm the pants off you, doesn't he?" "He sure does," laughed Deborah, who looked rather startled when James suddenly dropped to his knees, holding out a red box in his hand towards her.
"Deborah, will you do me the honour of becoming my wife? Will you marry me?"
Deborah's face went white, the colour draining from her skin. Her eyes widened in astonishment, and James immediately took her finger and slipped the engagement ring on it. But it seemed rather loose on her.
"You haven't answered me," said James. "Will you marry me, Deborah?"
"I can't believe this is happening," said Liesl excitedly. "Go on, Deborah. You've been waiting for this girl. Don't keep James in suspense. Answer him, or I'll marry him myself. See if I don't." "Yes, yes, I'll marry you," said Deborah, reaching out to hug James enthusiastically. "Oh my goodness, you got the ring," she said, staring down at the huge rock on her finger, with an expression of unbridled awe on her face. "You said you'd have to make a plan to get the ring. I thought you were reluctant to buy it for me, given its hefty price tag."
"Well, you're worth it, aren't you, Deborah? And if you wanted me to steal the crown jewels for you in order to marry me, I'd have somehow made it happen."
"Oh, I love it! And I love you," said Deborah, glancing down at the ring in disbelief. The rock was absolutely enormous, and the diamond glittered and sparkled in the sunshine. And in that perfect moment, Deborah felt like the happiest girl in the entire world. She felt like she wanted to pinch herself 100 times over, because the ring she was wearing was so magnificent.
"I'm sorry the size of the ring appears to be too big," said James. "You better not keep it on your finger. Put it back in the red box for the time being, until I take it to the jeweller for you to be taken in to the right size. I don't know why I got the size so horribly wrong."
Deborah reluctantly put the ring back in the red box and slipped it into her pocket, and every now and then on her walk she'd take a look at it. It was such a magnificent ring, and how she wished she could be wearing it on her finger for all to see. When they returned to the cabin, James got the wood-burning stove going, as the weather was starting to get significantly cooler, and there was a profound nip in the air, which you would expect in the autumn when temperatures begin to dip. But besides anything else, it always does tend to be a lot cooler in the mountains.
The three of them thoroughly enjoyed a celebratory lunch in the cabin, starting off with foie gras, with Melba toast, followed by a chicken and mushroom truffle pasta, and that was followed by a strawberry cheesecake, all that was very delicious. "I'm stuffed," said Deborah, rubbing her stomach in satisfaction. "I've drunk too much champagne and eaten far too much of that strawberry cheesecake. I feel as if I can't move. This has been one of the best, most exciting days of my entire life. But I think I'm going to leave the cabin at least 10 pounds heavier. If I carry on this way, by the time I walk down the aisle on my wedding day, I'll be popping out of my dress." Liesl reached out her arm to pull Deborah up to her feet. "Don't you dare go to sleep. Now is not the time to be lazy. We've come here for the weekend to the mountains, and there's so much to do and enjoy. And going to sleep is not an option. We're going for a walk together, down the Rabbit's Warren Trail, because you're going to work off some of that cheesecake." "Are you insane?" said Deborah. "I just want to sit here contentedly and stare at the flames in the wood-burning stove. We went on the Pilgrim's Way earlier. I don't want to go for a walk again. I don't feel like moving a muscle. I'm happy and just content to sit here, like a very satisfied cat. How about James go with you on this walk? I just want to stay here enjoying the warmth of the wood-burning stove and doing absolutely nothing, and occasionally looking at my engagement ring inside the red box." James was drifting off to sleep in one of the comfortable chairs in the cabin, his head slumped to one side. He was clearly enjoying the warmth from the wood-burning stove. He certainly didn't look physically up to a walk. He was barely able to keep his eyes open, and looked as if he'd knocked back way too much champagne. He had murmured something under his breath about the fact that no thank you very much, he wasn't up for a walk. "Are you kidding me?" said Liesl. "There's no way James is going to go for a walk with me. Look at him. He's half dead on that chair over there. But you are going to come with me, Deborah, and I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not. Do you hear me? Don't you want to burn off those cheesecake calories so you look drop-dead gorgeous in your wedding dress on your big day? I may remind you, Deborah, nobody got a fabulous figure by doing nothing." "I don't care," said Deborah, who was slurring her words and occasionally hiccuping. "If I'm the size of a beached whale, what does it matter? I'm happy to stay here. I've had far too much champagne, and I certainly don't fancy a walk." "We are all a little drunk, Deborah. All the more reason why we could do with some light exercise before it gets dark." "Come on, don't be such a wet blanket. A walk will do you good." Deborah was not amused that Liesl was so determined to go on another walk, but Liesl had assured her it would be a short one at that, and that the exercise would do her the world of good. If anyone could make Deborah Neeson do anything she didn't want to do, then it was Liesl Greer. So even though she was slightly inebriated and exceedingly reluctant to take any exercise, Liesl's persuasiveness had paid off. Deborah, rather disagreeably, with a little cantankerous grumbling, put on her red puffer jacket and her walking boots, and slipped the red box that contained her engagement ring in the pocket of her puffer jacket. She wanted to keep her beautiful ring close by her at all times, almost as if she was terribly afraid that if she didn't keep a beady eye on it, that it might just disappear. It was such a bummer she couldn't wear it on her finger. She didn't understand why James had got her ring size so horribly wrong, when she had told him dozens of times what her ring size actually was. "Don't take your ring on the walk," said Liesl, who had seen Deborah slip the red box in the pocket of her puffer jacket. "That's not a good idea. Don't do it." "But I don't want to leave the ring in the cabin. I want to keep the box in my pocket," Deborah insisted. "I want it close to me so I can keep looking at it and admiring it. I've just got engaged, Liesl. Cut me some slack, why don't you?" "Look, as long as you don't lose it," said Liesl, "you can bring it along. But James broke the bank for you getting that ring for you, and he didn't hold back on telling you as much. There was a lot of sacrifice on his part in getting you that engagement ring. So if you lost it, he'd do his nut, and probably have to remortgage your apartment. Come, let's go. Oh, goodness, look at your fiancé on the couch over there. He looks dead to this world, doesn't he? And he's got quite the snore on him," she teased. "At least I'm not the one that has to sleep in his bed for the rest of my life. I pity you there, I really do, Deborah." They both smiled as they slipped past James in the chair, who was snoring contentedly, like a flat-nosed bulldog. The moment the two women left the cabin,
They realized the temperature had still dropped even more, so they were glad to be wearing their puffer jackets and their scarves. The icy breeze seemed to do wonders in blowing away the cobwebs of their inebriation. Very abruptly, almost as if someone had thrown them into baths of ice-cold water in order to wake them up. Deborah found that she was beginning to enjoy the walk, and the sleepiness she had experienced earlier in the cabin was slowly beginning to fade, although she wasn't going to admit this to Liesl, as she had begrudgingly agreed to come on this walk, so come hell or high water, she wasn't going to let Liesl know that she was deriving any pleasure from this leisurely exercise. The wood grove was magnificent, consisting of a labyrinth of tall, lofty, old-growth trees that were rarely big in size and stature. Some looked as if they were incredibly old, as if they had absorbed the energy of bygone generations. Deborah and Liesl eagerly took the path marked Rabbit's Warren, which, according to the visitor's book in the cabin, was a beautiful trail to take, described by people staying in the cabin as magically outer-worldly. "You feel as if you've entered another world," one person had written. Another said, "I felt on this trail as if I'd slipped into a parallel universe. My husband felt exactly the same way as me," she wrote. "There was something so fairy tale-like about the Rabbit's Warren Trail. And it was so aptly named, I have to say, as we encountered hundreds of the cutest rabbits I've ever seen. Alas, they were so wild and untame, but I wouldn't have minded taking one home with me if given the chance, to keep an as adorable pet. But try catching one of those wild things, because you never will. I felt I ought to mention something rather incredulous that happened to us on the Rabbit's Warren's trail. Well, me and my husband Frank fancied an energetic walk that wasn't too long or short. We left the cabin at 3 in the afternoon to embark on this trail. But when we returned to the cabin, we discovered to our amazement that it was still 3 in the afternoon, even though we'd left the cabin a long time ago, much, much earlier. We had left our 14-year-old daughter Tiffany in the cabin, as she didn't fancy joining us on our intrepid adventure. She hates taking long walks or any kind of exercise. So when we walked through the door of the cabin, her first words to us were, "So you've come back? That wasn't much of a walk, was it? You've only been gone for a second. Is this some kind of warped joke of yours? So much for the two of you being ambitiously energetic." My daughter can be very sarcastic at the best of times, but I was rather wondering what she was going on about, for she was making no sense to me at all. I mean, I was absolutely exhausted from our long walk down the Rabbit's Warren Trail, and had worked up quite a sweat. But she said we'd been gone for merely minutes. And I assure you I'm not exaggerating when I say me and my husband had been on a long walk. So why on earth was it still 3 o'clock when we returned to the cabin? How had we not lost 2 hours of our time? We did not know what to make of this strange anomaly. Another person had written in the visitor's book, "I had the same unearthly, rather cryptic experience myself, of time going a little haywire, you could say, on the Rabbit's Warren Trail. But in our case, we lost rather than gained. My family, which includes my husband Lucan, my 2 sons Christopher and Tyson, were walking down the Rabbit's Warren Trail, leaving the cabin at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, to be precise. The hike must have been a couple of hours long. But when we returned to the cabin, it was 6 o'clock in the evening, and the hike, we believed, had only taken no more than 2 hours. So we couldn't account for 4 hours of time, just going missing like that. How does that happen?" Other people who'd also left remarks in the visitor's book claimed to have experienced weird time distortions as well, but some had not experienced them at all. But they had indeed felt there was something paradoxical and almost fairy tale-like about the Rabbit's Warren Trail. One person wrote that she, her husband and 16-year-old daughter Blanche had run into a strange man on the trail who had been chopping wood, but then he dematerialized in front of their eyes. "We saw him, and then he almost vaporized, like a wisp of smoke before us. We absolutely believe we saw a ghost, and I'm telling you it freaked us the hell out. The wood grove was so spooky after that. There was something not right about it. I'm telling you, the woods on the Rabbit's Warren Trail are haunted. We heard strange whispers on the trail, and were hit with the overwhelming sense we were being watched all the time. That really gave me the creeps.
After that peculiar experience, I never went on that trail again. I recommend taking the Otter Trail or the Pilgrim's Way Trail, which boasts incredible views, but quite a bit of uphill walking, I have to say. But if you're not athletic, I would stick to the Otter's Trail and avoid the Rabbit's Warren Trail. There's something about that trail that sets my nerves on edge.
Another person wrote, I think some people staying here at the cabin have had way too much to drink, I'm sorry to say. I don't mean to be rude about this, but let's not kid, the alcohol provided to the guests at the cabin is very generous indeed. The fridge was overstocked with far too much alcohol, if you ask me. If we had drunk it all, we'd have been out for the count all weekend. I'm sorry, but I don't know what some people are on about in this visitor's book when it comes to missing time. It sounds all very far-fetched to me. I went on the Rabbit's Warren's trail a couple of times, recording my time with my husband. Yes, it was magnificent. Yes, it was enchanting. But no, we didn't lose or gain any time on this trail. Nor did we experience the feeling of being watched or hear strange whispers. Let's just say, maybe the drink has been talking a lot here. When Liesl had read people's comments, she didn't know what to make of some of these visitors' remarks about time anomalies, and she didn't believe for a second that these comments had been written by people that were inebriated, even though of course it was true that the fridge in the cabin was overloaded with an excess of alcohol. When she'd read some of the remarks in the visitor's book to James, he'd simply chuckled and said, Sounds like some people staying here at the cabin probably did have far too much to drink. There is no way all these time anomalies actually happened. We're not living in the Twilight Zone, are we? I'm inclined to agree with that lady's remark, when she suggests that they were tiddly when they wrote down those remarks. They probably drank too much alcohol in the cabin. I think some people just couldn't resist overindulging. And when you're slightly inebriated, you look at the world through a distorted lens, do you not? To tell you the truth, James, I honestly don't know what to make of other people's accounts. They've reported paradoxical events while trekking along the Rabbit's Warren Trail. You really think they were all drunk? I don't think so, somehow. A lot of their remarks seem very compos mentis to me. I can't for the life of me understand, James, why you're so dismissive that strange things can actually happen to people that may have no rational or earthly explanation.
Well, I'm sorry, Liesl, James had said adamantly, but I don't buy into these time anomalies. They don't make any sense to me at all.
So there we are, that is the end of part 3 of our story. Part 4 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.